England is becoming a degenerate country. I saw this story about this guy in Scotland, and he came from the Democratic Republic of Congo, I think it was. And I've got to be careful what I say on YouTube. You know how it is, guys. Let's just say he had a relationship with his stepdaughter. It's not inappropriate. It was illegal. I can't say the word on here, but either way, he was found guilty of it. But he's allowed to stay in Scotland and not being deported. The man obviously was an immigrant, because it would affect his right to a family life. I'm not even joking when I say this. I know other countries are laughing at us right now, and rightly so. It's made me kind of think about what it means to be an Englishman, right? What does it mean to be an Englishman? Why are we tolerating this? See, here's the thing about English values. I'm not going to go through them because everyone would think something different. And remember, I'm half Welsh, half English. My father was Welsh, my mum was English. But I was born in England. And I've lived everywhere. I've lived the majority of my time in Wales, to be fair, North Wales. But I was also living in Scotland when I was on an aircraft up there with the military. And now I live in England. But I live on the Welsh border, quite close to the Welsh border. What does it mean then to be an Englishman? And how do we tolerate people like this? I know this happened in Scotland, but we know it's happened all over the UK as well. People are allowed to stay in this country. Immigrants come over, they do the most appalling things, and they're allowed to stay here because it would affect... Because European law says that we're still somehow come under, it would affect their right to a family life. You see, if we go back in time, to go back to however you want to go back to, right? We would have been in a community where that wouldn't have been tolerated. We would have seen the threat from within. Oh, look what this man has done. This man might do it to our children as well. And I don't want to get myself in trouble with the police, because it seems to be very easy to do that right now. But we would have taken matters into our own hands. I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating violence. I can't, guys, because else the channel, you know how it works, right? You know how it works. We can't be doing that, rocking up at someone's door and just kicking it in. You know what I mean? We can't be doing that. This is the bit where I say we have to let law, we have to let the police, we have to let, government and governance. But when it's failed, when it doesn't protect the people anymore, it didn't protect that young girl. That was his stepdaughter I don't know what words I can say on YouTube without getting the channel taken down. I think I can say abused. I think we can say that word, which is probably the mildest form of saying what he did to this young girl. When that, in a community, you'd be like, right, that man's out. That's it. We don't want that guy anymore. Like, literally, there's no point in... I've got to be so careful. There's no point in him being around anymore. That makes sense. Because what's he bringing to our community? Apart from threats of harming our children, let's say. And again, I'm not advocating anything like this. I'm not advocating we go against this guy. But at what point do we say we're just harbouring all these people, we're nurturing and we're growing these people that are no good at all for our country whatsoever? Now, I know France and Germany have got a lot worse. If we look at what Farage was saying with the growth of, let's say, Islam, for example, where he said Islam was going to grow 75% every 10 years.
But the nub of it is we have a Muslim population in Britain growing by about 75% every 10 years, right? That's just where we are.
Mm-hmm. So let's say 6% of the country right now, I can't do the maths in my head, even though I used to fly jets for a living. I can't do it in my head because I just can't, I haven't got time. But let's say 6% right now, and then it grows by 75% next 10 years, and then 75% again the following 10 years. That's 75% of how much it's grown before. So it's not the same amount that goes up by 75%. It's 75% of the increased amount, and then 75% of that increased amount. It's never ending because they're having children and we're not as English people. It is what it is. But surely it should be our decision whether we have kids or not. If our country wants its own downfall, it wants to be a smaller country, less powerful around the world, whatever it might be, that should be our decision. That should not be up to our governments to import all these immigrants from around the world because of whatever excuse, global warming, climate change, whatever the latest thing is today. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be their decision to do this. It should be our decision, guys. And I get animated about this, but we've got to be realistic as well. It's out of control. It can't be stopped. It's never going to end. The only thing we can do is remigration, I guess. And no one seems to want to do that because we're full of weak men. I say men because I think women are weak anyway when it comes to this stuff. And what I mean by that is they're just not willing to grip it and run with it. I think some would. I think you go back to the Thatcher days, and I honestly believe that would happen, but there's so few. And I'm not even hitting women for this. I can understand that. I can understand women wanting to be more agreeable and wanting to fit in more. It's the men I have an issue with. The men in the senior elements of the military, the men in the senior elements of the government, border force, whatever it might be. These men who've acquiesced to the latest thing, which was diversity, inclusiveness, whatever it might be. These are the men that we need to get out. We need to get people back in who've got a backbone, that are willing to say no. This is fundamentally wrong. Because if we look at communities and protecting our communities, you wouldn't allow this man from the Democratic Republic of Congo, who's now in Scotland, who's obviously abused his stepdaughter. You wouldn't allow them in your community. If it was in my village, I'd be like, dude, you better find somewhere else to live, mate. I'm not even joking. You know what I mean? There's not even joking. Everyone's saying the same thing. You're not welcome here, mate. You better go somewhere where they don't know who you are, because my family's at risk from you. All right. So I don't want you here, and I'm going to make it very difficult for you to be here, whatever that might be. And I'm sure when the police are watching this tape, they will go, well, let's see what Tim means and go and interview him. I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to throw myself in jail here, but all I'm saying is it's not going to be a great place. It's going to be uncomfortable for you to live in the village if that was happening. So why do we tolerate it in our country? This is England. Why are we tolerating people like that? Okay, that was Scotland, but you know what I mean? We've seen it happen in England. We see it happening in England. Why do we allow this? Why do we invite these people in? Because the truth is, guys, between me and you, we don't. The English people do not invite these people in. We don't want people like this in. We don't want people that have come into the country who we don't know who they are. We don't want them here. Got the documents, have they? Thrown them in the sea on the way over. Because the problem is when they do that, when they throw the documents in the sea, legislation means that we can't, international law means we can't export them back to or re-migrate them back to a country that they've come from, because we don't know what country it is. So it's up to us now, as the country that they're now in, to prove they're from this country. So let's say a guy comes in let's pick a random country. Let's say, I'm picking a random country now. Let's say he comes in from Algeria. I'm just random country. And he throws his documents in the sea. And then he comes in and says, I'm seeking asylum. All right. Because in my country, I've been abused. And we say, what country was that, mate? And he goes, Tunisia. And now we've got to prove that he's come from Tunisia. No one in Tunisia who knows who this guy is. He doesn't want to go back there, right? So he's allowed to stay in the UK for as long as he wants, pretty much. He can take handouts, he gets onto that benefit scheme, and he can stay here. We have to prove where he came from, and we can't do it. We can't prove where he came from because he won't tell us. That's what the Rwanda scheme was about. It was making it more unpalatable. It's like, yeah, you can come here, you can claim asylum, but you're going to do it in Rwanda. Or alternatively, of course, you can go back to your other country. It's not that we don't want immigrants, because we do, and we understand that we have to have a turnover, like Cameron was saying, 50 to 100,000 a year. That's what happens. This thing happens. We understand it. We're tolerable people. We're English people. We understand it, right? The reason I'm not saying British is a lot of people don't like the notion of Britishness. They like the notion of, speak to the Welsh, whether they want to be understood as British. They don't at all. They want to be understood as Welsh. Okay, and English, Scottish, Northern Irish, whatever it might be, Irish as a collective, doesn't matter. The truth is, we don't want it. It's the whole point. Okay, we don't want it. We're very tolerant people, though. So here's the problem. They come over without documentation. We can't put them back into their country unless we can prove they've come from that country. And they won't tell us. They won't do it. That's why you need to make it unpalatable for these people. See, I think, personally, the English people, and I'm using England again, have got an absolute right to say, we need to put people like Blair on a stand, and he needs to answer a charge, like a treasonous charge almost. Like, look what you've done. I think he knows what he's done. And I think he knows it's irrecoverable. I mean, he should do. And then we need to get people like Cameron, everyone else before him as well, everyone else after him, who followed the Blairite project, as it were, and were infatuated by this new liberalism. We need to get them and put them on stage as well. Put them on a stand and say, right, answer these questions. The British people. I'm saying British now. Let's all get together on this, you know what I'm saying? But either way, let's get together. We need to put them on a stand. Look what you've done to this country. Look what this country was. Look what this country is now. And you can look at London. You can see what London is, 37% ethnic British. It's ridiculous. It's almost, we're seeing it happen in front of our own eyes. I think I've got to make these, I mean, I do stuff with aviation, guys, but I've still got to make these films because I care. I've got to know that people in half a decade or a decade's time know there were guys like me trying to do something about this, right? And being called out for it and being cancelled and losing money from it. It's important. And I think it's important as well in your neighbourhoods that we also do. I don't know how you want to do it. I don't know what the answer is. But we somehow have to make these people accountable. I mean, this latest thing with Starmer, I don't think it's got any traction personally. Starmer and the Southport guy and the father. Just careful what you say. There's a trial and we can't prejudice this trial. But I don't think it's got any traction at all, that, by the way. But the Manchester guys as well. The 2 guys in Manchester, they're having a civil prosecution brought against them for beating up police officers. Just chuck them out of the country. Like, get rid of them. Like, okay, so that if they are British, let's put them in jail. Let's build more jails. Let's jail more people. But we got to get good with the rehabilitation, of course, and that is a problem. Guys, if you know what the answer is, because I don't know what the answer is, put it in the comments. We seem to not be able to do anything with these people in senior government. There's nothing we can do. And when we do get something with them, it's like, oh, he must resign. Who gives a fuck if he resigns? What, takes his massive pension? I don't want him to resign. I want him to answer for what they've done. I want them to literally stand there and be humiliated and embarrassed. These soy men, and it mainly is men. I'm not blaming women for this at all, but men at the top of government, they should know better. Like English men. The history of Englishmen, the history of Englishness. And these people just don't want to say anything bad about fucking diversity, so they want to bring more immigrants in because of global warming or some shit. Look, just let me know what you think the answer is, because it's going to have to be practical, because the alternative is we all rock up in London and smash the place up. And best of luck to the farmers for doing that, by the way, because I think they're right on with that, 110%. What's the rest of the country going to do? It's never ending. We've got to make it unpalatable for people that shouldn't be here to go. How do we do that? And I don't know how we do that. Because it should come from the top. It should say, right, stopping benefits, yeah, fine. You know, or what crime? Prison, out. If you get done in prison and you shouldn't be here, you know, if you get done for something, you get in prison, after your term, you're out. That's what it should be in any kind of reasonable society. But for some reason, we've got some fucking idiots at the top who are obviously grifting off something, aren't they? Getting paid European money or some shit like that. And they won't do it. Of course they won't do it. They don't want to do the hard things because they're soy. They're just soy milk drinking. You know what I mean? They're not men, are they? Not Englishmen. Don't call them Englishmen. Don't fucking call them Englishmen. They don't. They're not worthy of that title. They're not. Horrendous people that somehow have got to the top of government. You know, hey, listen, I had to put this one out. I'm trying to do some like positive content. Just kind of flashes me up when I saw that story about that man who abused his stepdaughter and then gets to stay in the UK. What the hell's going on with that? So what's he going to abuse some other people? Someone's going to tell me it's not his fault? If it was in my village, it would be very much obvious that it was his fault, and he wouldn't, yeah. I can't say too much, guys, you know, because else... Knock at the door seems to be quite popular, doesn't it? Hello, it's the Federikis. I've come to talk to you about your non-crime hate incident or whatever it is now. Let me know what's going on, guys. Hey, stay positive. I will put positive content out. Stay positive, all right? I can sense there's a turn happening. Because, you know, the English will rise. And we are rising. Just taking a long time about it because we're getting some tea first, you know what I'm saying?